You're listening to the Be Better Off Show by Kelly+Partners.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Be Better Off Show, where we find terrific Australians who share their life stories and their tips for being healthier, wealthier and wiser. And this morning I've got Cara Hurry, the founder and MD of Entente Marketing Agency. Welcome, Cara.
Thanks so much, Brett. It's great to see you this morning.
It's so great to see you. Now, I wanted to start at the beginning because that's always a good place to start. Where were you born? Brothers and sisters, family background, education, and how did you come to the career that you've found?
Oh, I always worry when someone asks me that question that I've got a boring start to life, right? But
it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, indeed. Doesn't mean I didn't appreciate every second of it. So I was born in Armidale. But very swiftly, in very early years, 2 or 3, my parents moved us to the North Coast. And I spent most of my growing up years running around the northern beaches of Coffs Harbour region, which was beautiful. So I'm very lucky to have 2 very grounded, humble and supportive parents. I have an older brother who, as I'm sure everybody has experienced, caused me grief during my youth, but is one of my best friends today and biggest advocates. And we actually work together a lot because he also entered into the creative sphere and runs a graphic design business. So it's, I guess, my groundings. Why did I end up where I ended up? I guess both of my parents always, as much as they were in business, actually, they always had a sense of creativity. We were always on the weekends out doing craft projects, whether it might be mum's crazy mosaic offerings or explorations. And from my dad's perspective, he used to love designing outdoor spaces and their gardens, even today, if you go to their home, are unlike any other. So I guess it was that sense of just constant exploration and constantly wanting to challenge or do something different or new that led me down the path of marketing. Or, believe it or not, I actually first studied fashion design, as every young girl, I think, has a moment where they believe that fashion is the way and the life that they want to live. But my groundings in fashion design and apparel manufacturing, I very quickly switched. Once I started entering the workforce, I very quickly switched and realised, hang on, I don't know if I'm the best at the design end, but what I am really great at connecting to is people and people's love and emotion for what they're doing or what they're wearing. So I switched over and started to study marketing business and took that journey. So for the majority of my career, I have worked marketing in, I guess, the world's luxury and premium fashion brands, but also from a fibre and agriculture perspective, so right from the source all the way through, and in the sports arena. So it's been, and actually the last five or so years, it's really been taking everything I've learned from the intricacies of premium luxury marketing and taking that across to positive impact and food and beverage spaces, which has been a real joy, I must say.
So what did you learn, like in the companies that you worked in? What do you think, as a young person, what would you have liked to know, I guess, at 21, 22, 23, when you started your career, that you learned through that experience that you wish you knew earlier?
It's a really good question, the beauty of hindsight. I think that there's personal things. Before I answer from a marketing context point of view, there's personal growth elements. I wish I'd taken up meditation when I was in my early 20s to calm my mind and center my decisions on a morning and evening. That practice truly does help. I wish I'd always had the habit of allocating half a day a week to reading. I do that now at times. Of course, we get busy and I forget it, but knowledge is power. We all know it. So whether you're entering a new industry or a new market category, it's reading and delving or taking time for people that you regard as mentors or leaders in that space and learning from them, having coffee. I think staying connected as well. I think now bordering into the marketing side, I always think if I had my life again, I might go and study sociology, or I might have gone into business analyst world, because I think when I first started marketing, it was, believe it or not, before e-commerce and digital was really a thing. And I was the generation that was at the cusp of that. I was part of teams building first e-commerce websites and leading out social media campaigns before we knew, like when MySpace was still real, before Facebook was a thing. And back then, we didn't have the data that we have now. We didn't have the access to consumer behaviours and propensity to pay. And we couldn't monitor those changes based on the digital access that we have now. So it was more about creativity. It was more about a gut feel and about understanding consumer tension. And that part of marketing has not changed. I think that's the big thing that marketers today, I think, forget, because we're overpowered with data now. It's almost, the pendulum's almost swung too far. So
and you can't see the person, you can only see the data before.
Yep. You can't see the forest through the trees. So I think that it's very much, we get overwhelmed with the amount of information that can come to us. But ultimately, I think the biggest thing for success for marketing is always putting yourself in the consumer's shoes. Now, whether that's a B2B customer or an end consumer, it really doesn't matter. If you can put yourself in that customer's shoes and you can understand what's emotionally driving them, but also what are the market factors that are making their life hard or great, and how do you talk to that? How does your product solve it? But how does your brand create that emotional connection to answer to it? If you can harness in on that, you're very likely to drive success from a brand point of view.
So when you talk about consumer tension, what is consumer tension?
Consumer tension, I think any marketer will explain it slightly different. To me, attention is maybe something you like to portray, but is not necessarily the truth. So, for example, as humans, we all like to believe we're charitable. We all like to showcase our support of charities. We also always like to go to events to kind of support a good cause. Or we all like to call out and say we're very environmentally savvy. But actually, the reality is majority of people are still driven by price. And everybody knows, as much as it costs more to be environmental or it costs more to be charitable, behind the scenes, if everyone was to hand over their credit card statements as they do in your world, BK, you'd very likely find that the investment is not as much as they showcase. So
that's really interesting.
And I think if you can, like, I remember one of the first brands that ever harnessed on that tension in particular was a US glasses brand, like eyeglasses, called Warby Parker. And I always love, as old as that case study is, I always love to look back at it. Because what they did was they said, for every pair of glasses you buy, we will give another pair of glasses to someone in need. So they played on the tension that people really wanted to invest for themselves or buy something for themselves, but they wanted to feel better about themselves. And that there was tension. I recently was working with Hawke's Brewing Company. So Bob Hawke's Brewing Company, founded by two awesome ad creatives, David Gibson and Nathan Lennon, and working with them is a delight, because they're absolutely creative geniuses in marketing as well. But during the pandemic, obviously the alcohol industry was very challenged and the hospitality industry was very challenged. And regardless of your beliefs for vaccination or not vaccination, we believe as a team, and being founded by Bob, one of our greatest Labor Prime Ministers who founded Medicare, we believed that it was everybody's need to get out, to get vaccinated and to get back. So we were one of the first brands that led out the initiative of, you know what, under 30s or under 40s, go and get it, even if it's AZ. Keep our community safe. We'll send you some beer to enjoy on the weekend as well. And it boomed. But again, that was playing on tension that existed in the market at the time. So I think it's a really important driver to understand. And again, it comes back to what I was saying, put yourself in the consumer's shoes.
So is that because there's a lot of emotion in that tension and you're trying to get into that emotion?
Yes, it's sometimes not. The two examples we just talked about definitely were emotional behaviours for end consumers. Tension can also work in a business world. So Brett, I'm sure, like if we talked about accounting or financial planning at the moment, maybe from a business perspective, you need to drive revenue and you need to drive profit and increasing profit for your shareholders. So actually, in my industry sector, one of the brands coming under fire at the moment is H&M. Okay, we all know it, global fast fashion giant. They, to their credit, they are, I do believe, really trying to change into a sustainable and an environmental ethos. But the tension here is to truly change their ways, they would need to reduce the amount of product they're producing. They would need to increase recycling, which would increase their product prices. But then, flip side, they're releasing a commercial intention to their shareholders to increase revenue. I think it was 18%. To do that, they have to increase their product. So it's that again is a tension. How do you, as a potential manufacturer in their supply chain, how do you answer to that tension? How do you build your brand and garner their loyalty as a long-term customer by playing on that? So tension is, yes, in a consumer context, it's very emotional, but in a B2B context, it's still just as relevant and important to win the game.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So in fashion, there's a massive issue that theoretically they have to sell more to make more. And there's now, documentaries and clear research on the impact of fashion and where it ends up and the amount of landfill. And now countries, I think China was taking a lot of it, and India, now they're saying they won't take the landfill. As you get a shift back to quality, it has always amused me that, okay, we used to have suits that, I think Prince Charles was renowned for wearing a pair of shoes that is over 50 years old, and that he would take back to, a lot of the great old English shoe brands. You'd send the shoes back and pay them £50 and they'll repair them. And they're proud that they make something that can last 50 plus years. That ethos sort of got swept away with fast fashion, if you like. And the manufacturing capacity that came on when sort of 600 million Chinese entered the workforce 20 years ago was sort of a one-off event. Where does the world go in that? For these brands, I look at them and think it is an unsustainable business model. You cannot grow something that just produces essentially $2 T-shirts off the back of slave labor in dodgy financial arrangements with your staff and dodgy environmental conditions for long.
Look, I don't propose to hold all the answers. I think there's a few parts to that, BK. I think first you need to stop and go, what are the consumer macro trends? Okay. So back then, and actually 15 years ago when I moved to New York, I was leading marketing and business development for the Woolmark company. So a premium and natural fibre, but at the time we were under 2% of the global fibre market. And the macro trends at the time were very much all about globalization. It was all about convenience. And it was all about access, right, to whatever I could find. And that was when fast fashion brands really started to grow and started to boom, because they were answering that consumer need. They were answering the market need. Now, what's interesting when I look back on that is that sustainability back then was on the agenda. It was talked about, but big business ignored it. And in all honesty, in the fashion industry, my personal opinion is that there are still too many ignoring it today. But maybe they've got that. Maybe they're into the tension that they know the research on environmentalism is that if everyone's an environmentalist, but if it costs them $2 more, they're not. I would actually say that the studies and the data in particular in the fashion industry and post-pandemic is showing reverse to that now. And also, if you
but it's not true across electricity, for example.
That is true. Yes, yes. Talking only about textiles or fashion at the moment.
And like your mobile is the worst environmental device ever. So if you said to every
batteries,
every junior who's an environmentalist, well, you can be one by giving up your iPhone.
Mobile phone, would they do it?
Exactly. There's absolutely no chance of that happening. So it's great tension. Okay, back to fashion. So what's going on there? So
I think then, you look today, and especially post-pandemic, the big market call, and actually even in Australia, our government election also showcased that on a broad scale. We were voting for the environment. We were voting for sustainability. And I think obviously Australia is not the only country in the world. The US has currently released a strategy on import and legislation to come around supply chain integrity and transparency. And the EU has just released a strategy on circularity in textiles, all of which are not only talking and supporting community and customer sentiment, but are obviously moving further towards the potential of legislation, which will force change in the industry.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I think business models, if they do not change, will start to become obsolete. You can also look at case studies like Reformation or Pangaea. These companies have boomed into multi-million-dollar businesses almost overnight because the only thing they play on is sustainable delivery of product or development of product, but also circularity and recycled options. So give back schemes. And I do think the juggernauts of the world will start to move this way. Of course, we're now talking mass market. If we're in the luxury space, luxury has always been a model of produce less at higher value.
Yeah.
And I think that even in the mass market space, there is propensity for that and there's opportunity for that. And I think a brand like Pangaea is a great example of it.
Yeah, very interesting. Now, just to take you back to those observations you made for early on, so meditation, reading, mentors, staying connected, when you worked at LVMH, for example, what did you learn? It's a big, huge company. It obviously has training other people don't have. And then, what did you learn that helped you? And what did you, I always say your life's either an example or a warning. So what were the examples of good things that you learned, and what were the examples of things that you think should be different or could be for you?
Yeah.
You do differently.
I think that,
and it was a different world, right? So it was almost it wasn't
pre-pandemic,
but the internet is different. It's pre-pandemic.
Yep. I think if I might answer that slightly differently, if it's okay, BK. I had three main roles, like three, I guess, milestone career moments before I started my own marketing agency. My first one was with the Woolmark Company. So I was part of, actually in Australia, it's called Australian Wool Innovation, and I was lucky to be part of that team as they reacquired the Woolmark, which was the global mark for wool and quality wool around the world. And I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed back then, fresh out of studying marketing and business, and I was transferred over to New York to lead marketing and business development. And I think if I look at that role, what I really learned there was the power of partnerships and creative collaboration. So how we started to bring the Woolmark back on the agenda was twofold. It was working with brands to understand how far we could push and develop our product and what that would celebrate and what that would answer for the consumer, whether that would be a more silky and diamond application approach for the luxury market. But it was also when we started to see wool really shoot into sports because of the properties it had that could answer that consumer's needs. We also were part of setting up the very first direct-to-farmer supply chains. So we started to, even though, as I said, sustainability was only subtly on the agenda back then, how we could play on that as a brand was by telling the story of our farmers, which today is a given, right? It's a mainstay today in food beverage fashion. But back then it was new. We were on the front foot of starting to deliver those stories and create those connections, both emotionally and through the businesses. So I think I was also, at the time, we were under attack by the people of ethical treatment of animals at the time because of a practice in Australia called mulesing, which is required because 3 million sheep would die a year from fly strike. But that threw me into the fire's den of understanding and learning the power of corporate communications and of proactive planning and of transparent business operations. Yep. So from there, I think I take those learnings and I jumped into a role. It was my first global marketing director role. I was with a company called Durrell Industries across their cycling sports group, working on the marketing for the apparel around Cannondale, Mongoose, Schwinn, GT, and more, mostly in the cycling and running space. Now, here comes the mentor part. I had a wonderful CEO and a wonderful boss at that time, Stan Mavis. Stan had built Brooks Running, Pearl Izumi. He was actually the half marathon record holder in America. He was an overachiever, to say the least. But he taught me the power of discipline. So holding to a creative approach for marketing and seeing it through over a 1 to 2 year period, not expecting immediate results, understanding the discipline it takes and the consistency it takes to truly build a brand that people remember and continue to engage with. I think I also was given the opportunity to join Durrell Industries marketing committee at the time. So stepping up to look at our Durrell Industries group, which was across homewares, babies, sports and more. It's quite a large company over there. And at that time, I learned shareholder marketing. So this really combined from coming from Woolmark with my corporate communications and crisis management hat on, it started to escalate me into a true executive position of understanding the two facets of marketing. One is the power of the consumer, always being in their shoes and holding to that discipline and engagement based on what they are telling you. But secondly, it was pre-planning and proactively constructing all of the dynamics around your business that you needed to ensure it stayed safe, and to ensure that your brand was protected and not just loved. Yep. And then coming into Louis Vuitton Moët Hennessy Group after that was an absolute joy, and where I found a second really, really, really wonderful mentor, Philip Korn, who had been, the CFO for LV, but also ran the Americas and had come home himself as an Australian. So I joined Louis Vuitton after I'd been overseas for about, 7 years or so amongst New York and London. So coming home with that internationalization into the Australian market, but with one of the leading international companies, was phenomenal. I think LVMH is an amazing training ground. What it teaches you is intricacy. You build, I guess I was lucky to already have that basis of understanding brand and consumer drivers, but also corporate protection of brand. But then LVMH takes it to the next level with just really thinking through the customer is truly always front and center. And what are all the intricate pieces you can put into place to make sure that their experience is unforgettable?
Yeah.
That's what LVMH teaches you. It teaches you a value for customer first. And it teaches you a value of a long-lasting brand. That is not just a brand, it is part of their life. It is part of their value system. And that may sound cliche, but it is truly the inner workings of majority of luxury brands. Since starting my own business about 6 years ago, I've been lucky to continue to work with LVMH, with Celine and Dior, but I have also been working with Valentino and Moncler, and the true core hallmarks of luxury branding is customer centricity.
Yeah, very interesting. So when you go into your own business, and for people that are listening, I think it's a very interesting journey. So you step out, you're still working with these brands, and what is the 6-year journey now? I always like to ask people, so you look at, okay, I'm going to build this business, and then how's that turned out versus the original vision?
Never turns out as planned. any business, I'm sure, even if I turned that question on you, BK, if you thought
I love that Mike Tyson quote that everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Yep.
I do feel like starting, it's a bit brutal, but I think starting a business is a bit like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have your plan. So what's your plan? What's your reality? And how does that sort of change your understanding of life and business?
Oh, I think what was when I first came out, I saw a gap in the Australian market. There was sitting in a marketing director role for years. On one side of the fence, you had PR or communication-centric agencies, which are phenomenal, and they help create the news and engage the media in that way and amplify your brand voice. But it's one part of the marketing mix. And I found that from a marketing perspective's point of view, that there was more of a gap from communication spanning across more than just PR. It had to start to think about direct customer communication. It had to tie into partnerships, and it all needed to sync up. But on the flip side, the other side of the fence, there was really amazing creative ad agencies, which again, phenomenal. Insane creativity and really wonderful at coming in and building a campaign around a new brand or a new product launch. But again, it was one part of the marketing mix. And as more and more international brands were entering the Australian market, but secondly, as there was a slew of really innovative Australian brands exiting our country and growing overseas markets, I saw a gap to provide a full service 360-degree marketing solution. And it did work for me. We do successfully today still bolt in as an extension of the brands and the teams we work with. So for over 3 years, we operated as full suite marketing for Valentino to help them build. And then we also helped them transition and build out an internal team. And so those kind of journeys I really enjoy, because you can really add value across all the different marketing disciplines. So that part of my plan, I'm pleased to say, hasn't changed. But I actually thought at the time there would be a lot more strategic collaboration and strategic partnerships in the Australian market. That has, it's still there every now and then, and I'm lucky to work on some good projects that are collaborative and creative. But I think the Australian market dynamics, and especially post-COVID, everybody became really protective and really focused on short-term wins and gains for their business, as was necessary. So that hasn't evolved for me, but that's okay. I'm still enjoying things. And I did end up, especially during the pandemic, I definitely, in those first few years, ended up in a bit more communications than I thought I would. I made the bold move to completely switch out of that early this year and start to really further focus in on marketing advisory, brand development, and marketing 360 launch plans. So look, I think it's always going to be up and down. I don't know what's around the corner next. We don't know.
You had a bad car accident.
Yeah.
What does that do to sort of because I believe businesses that are run by founders are very strongly influenced by the values of those founders. What impact does that have on your values and your understanding of life and therefore the business?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you sit back and think, Brett, without fail. I was 4 months out. So it was a pretty serious accident. And during that time, I definitely, number one, couldn't believe how supportive of a network I had built myself, both on a business front and on a family and friend front. That was phenomenal. So I definitely came back with more appreciation and conscious movements to appreciate my staff, appreciate my clients, and appreciate the people around me. Even before pandemic and before the accident, I always did have the rule where my staff would always take extra RDOs, because I truly have that value, like we were talking, half a day every week reading. But if you actually tell your staff you have to take an extra day off a month or an extra day off every fortnight, use it to better yourself, use it to improve yourself, and use it to let your mind rest. I actually found my staff would get more done even though they were working less. So after the accident, I really considered that structure with my team, because we were also during the pandemic at the time it happened. So I really considered how I could reframe our workspace that we still today get together 2, if not 3 days a week. But how did I give them every quarter, we now do a cultural initiative together to have fun but engage with our industries. And so it kind of, I guess, gave me that value of let's not just work at it, let's work in it and enjoy it. And I've really kind of started to structure more things to ensure we are absorbing and participating in the marketing of our industry and absorbing it from a consumer point of view. The other thing, I definitely, it was part of my reason of turning off the public relations or the communications as a sole offering through my business, because I started to sit back and look at, I guess, the decimation of media in a way, especially when you're looking at the luxury or the FMCG space. In crisis communications and new brands, I think it still definitely has a big role to play. But I think it's one small part, and it's getting smaller because it's a pay-to-play game now. So I really decided to make that hard task and go, you know what, I'm going to downsize my business a bit, help 2 of my staff move in and find other jobs, and really focus in on marketing strategy and delivering robust roadmaps and plans that can add value. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. I think there's a million other things I would have learned, but they're the key on the work front.
And so when you look forward now, and one of the reasons I love doing these podcasts is I feel like I can make like an audio record of people's thoughts at the time. And, it's August 2022 when we're doing this. But if you look forward, are you a 5-year planner? Are you a 10-year planner with the business? If you look forward to say, okay, I thought it would be this, and now it's turned out to be that. Obviously, the pandemic is a sort of different event. What do you see as the 5-year plan for the business and your life, and how do you want that to go?
I'm a 5-year planner. I must say, obviously, during the pandemic, we've all had to become quarterly or short-term planners as well, which has been interesting, a bit of fun for marketing, because it's sugar hits rather than, hey, we got to worry about a whole 12-month plan and where that money flows and fits. But for my personal business and also personal life, because of course, as a business owner, your business is extremely tied to that. I absolutely am one of the cliches who want to move out of Sydney and start to enjoy an outdoor lifestyle more so. So I am structuring, I've made a really conscious decision to not grow my team above the magic number 7. So we have a nice harmony amongst our team, but to make up my team very considered with different marketing skill sets, from marketing strategy to marketing research to marketing execution. So that we can work on really great projects, like obviously always have 2 to 3 clients that we work with on an ongoing basis, helping add value and grow their businesses or brands, but then really look at projects that we can tap in and out of to challenge ourselves, but also to add value in the businesses that are developing new places or launching new products or entering into new markets, and really need that marketing uplift for just a short moment in time. The other thing I'm doing, as you would know well, BK, when you're in a service business, your opportunities for profit are minimalised because it's all people, it's all resources. So I've also started to better connect with a lot of my digital marketing collaborators, and we're starting to look at how we can systemize and automate a number of the market intelligence, market analytics, and market planning perspectives. So instead of being able to take on 4 market research and kind of brand roadmap projects per year, theoretically, I should be able to take on 12 to 20 of them if we can start to look at the consistencies and automation that can be involved in marketing. So that's where I'm headed. And also personally training myself. I went back and did my Australian Institute of Company Directors, and just starting to look at the advisory roles and opportunities I have in that space as well.
Yeah, it's great. So when you think about like a more outdoor lifestyle and a different way to live, is it pace? Is it nature? Is it, what's your take on that?
Nature first and foremost for me personally. I've always, even when I was living in New York and London, we would always find ways to escape to the outskirts in the Catskills up in state New York and hiking, or into the Welsh Mountains and the Brecon Beacons when we're in London. Nature to me it's a stabilizer. It allows my mind to calm down, and it allows me to come back to what's important. So for me, it is having that around me at all times and kind of taking that leave from the constant city structure. But also, I guess it's, I don't know if I'm too optimistic, BK. Like, I obviously get up every morning and I go for a swim here, or I work out in Sydney. I used to be a runner before the accident. I'm a pretty mad swimmer now. But up there, we'll have beach pools and ocean swimming, I think at a different level and a different scale, and just the wide open spaces. So,
Yeah, very interesting. So for everyone that's joined us today, I'm so pleased to have Cara with us. She's a fantastic person, as you can tell, and I think has done some really intelligent and amazing work. So if you get the chance to connect, then it won't be a bad thing for your life or your business. Love hanging out with you, and I love that the podcast gives me that easy excuse to catch up with people. And as I like to say to everybody at the end of a podcast, have a great day.
Thanks for having me, BK. Have a good day.
Thanks, legend.